Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're doing well. And before we get started, I'd like to highlight a video by fellow Ghost content creator and friend of the channel, La Goulette, who put together this great fan project video in celebration of Tobias's birthday, where she took submissions from fans across the world, sharing their own birthday wishes for him. So if you'd like to see that video, I'll make sure to leave it linked down below and let her know that Ghost Historia sent you. So now, let's celebrate the birthday of Tobias Forge, the man who gave us Ghost. And instead of just saying happy birthday, we want to say thank you by remembering how this band truly began. Not as a grand plan, not as a guaranteed success, but as a last desperate leap of faith. At the end of the 2000s, Tobias had already spent years playing in bands. He was approaching 30, he was married, he had twin children, and music had not yet given him stability. By his own words, I was at a point of desperation. He had already tried multiple projects. He had played extreme metal, underground scenes, and revivalist styles. None of them had broken through. But in 2006, he began writing something different. Songs inspired by bands like Blue Oyster Cult, Merciful Fate, and Misfits. Music built on classic rock structure and pop melody, but infused with darker themes and atmosphere. At first, Ghost wasn't even meant to be a full band. It was just one project among many. Everything changed in March of 2008. Tobias entered a studio in Stockholm with his friend Gustav Lindström and recorded 3 demo songs. When they listened back, he realized something was different. It didn't sound like the metal scene he knew. It didn't sound like the bands he'd been in before. It sounded strange and somehow powerful. But there was still a problem. He had written the songs, but he hadn't planned to be the singer. He contacted several established vocalists, hoping someone else would front the project. None of it worked. And slowly, he realized the truth. If this was going to exist, he would have to be the one. That's when the image began to form. A frontman inspired by religious ceremony, a figure drawn from horror, theater, satire, a character that could embody the songs and their themes. Not for shock alone, but because Tobias had always loved theatrical artists like Kiss and King Diamond. He wanted Ghost to feel like a performance, not just a concert. And yet, even then, success wasn't guaranteed. He was still working a day job, still trying to support his family, still unsure whether this strange idea would ever leave the underground. In March of 2010, he uploaded Ghost's first songs to MySpace, and then something happened. Almost immediately, people began listening, sharing, talking, but that same night, tragedy struck. Tobias received a phone call. His brother Sebastian had collapsed and died suddenly from an undiagnosed heart condition. One moment, Ghost was beginning to gain attention. The next, his family was in shock. In the middle of this emotional collision, grief on one side and possibility on the other, Tobias made the decision to continue. He later reflected that it felt like a cruel and surreal exchange, as if the moment Ghost began to live, his brother had been taken from him. It was a loss he could not change, and a path forward he could not abandon. Soon after, a label offered a deal, a proper studio recording followed, and Opus Eponymous was born. Ghost's first live show took place later that year in Germany, then London, then beyond. Word spread fast, not just because of the look, but because the music sounded unlike anything else in modern metal. And as Ghost grew, Tobias kept his face hidden. Not out of fear, but out of purpose. As he explained years later, the anonymity wasn't about shyness, it was about preserving the mystery, protecting the illusion, letting the band be bigger than the man. By 2012, Ghost had become the biggest band on their original label. But even then, Tobias didn't believe mainstream success was coming. He thought the band might remain small, boutique, cult. Instead, Ghost grew into arena tours, charting albums, and a global audience. Not because it followed trends, but because it was built on melody, imagery, and conviction. And all of it began with one man deciding not to quit. So today, on Tobias Forge's birthday, we don't just celebrate the frontman of Ghost, we celebrate the songwriter who refused to stop and the artist who turned desperation into creation. Thank you, Tobias, for taking that risk, for giving the world Ghost, and for proving that sometimes the most painful moments can still give birth to something meaningful. Happy birthday. Last night